What's the worst place to hear "uh-oh"? When you come out of anesthetic and hear the surgeon say it. Setting. Me having a C-section while numbed but conscious. I feel enormous pressure. I can't quite process what has happened. I hear "oh whoops. Sorry. That's never happened before." Anesthesiologist pushes additional meds and I'm out. Afterward my husband told me that the surgeon was talking to his nurse when he said it. And it was because he had just dropped the baby back into me. The pressure I felt was the baby landing on my spine from the inside. When a toddler has locked themselves in the bathroom. My son once shaved one eyebrow and the front half of his head when he locked himself in. It took me 2 minutes to get the skeleton key and unlock the door. Old sticky locks. I was impressed at how fast he managed to do it but horrified that he did. The kid had the most perfect brows and such a beautiful afro. It pained me to finish cutting it off. And I had to draw his eyebrow on BC. It was the day of my brother's graduation and we were having a big family party. The control room of a nuclear power plant. I work at a nuclear power plant and the operators always tell me our reactors are basically designed to shut down and they have to constantly provide inputs to keep it running. It's much easier to accidentally bring the reactor to a screeching halt than it is to keep the chain reaction going. A cockpit from the pilot's seat. Eater. Okay. Enough people have told me about the Challenger. It's tragic but please stop filling my inbox with the same reply. My dad flew for the Navy. One time my dad was sitting next to my godfather as passengers on a puddle jumper from one island in Hawaii to another. After the passengers had boarded and during the usual pre-flight cacophony of whirs and buzzes my dad was starting to doze off and he suddenly opened his eyes and said, "Oh." Sure enough. The flight was delayed and they had to deplane due to mechanical issues they couldn't fix with passengers aboard. My godfather won't sit next to him on flights anymore. He said that ignorance is bliss and he'd rather not know ahead of time if he's going to die from a plane crash. At the DMV. Worst fking feeling. God, I hate all the damn redundancies in the DMV so much. Like with all those hoops to jump through, you're bound to have something go wrong somewhere. Getting a haircut. My now fiance was the first real human to cut hair on. I just started my training and met him a few weeks after. He had long hair at the time so it was perfect to practice. Well, I kept saying oops to wind him up. We weren't actually even in a relationship at this point. On a roller coaster. Somewhat related. Was riding an old wooden roller coaster about 10 years ago. It had seatbelts and safety bars that would lock down above your knees. At some point during the ride, I decided to pull up on the bar to see if it was working. To my dismay, it swung up with ease and locked in the upward position. The roller coaster continued to race down the track over several bumps. It was a good thing I had my seatbelt on, or I would have flown out of the car for sure and been toast. The coaster eventually came to a stop outside the station, waiting for the next one to leave. Other riders noticed that my bar was stuck up and tried their bars too. Theirs also went up and locked. Eventually everyone tried it and they all went up. The coaster then started to pull into the station. The look of utter shock from the staff was unforgettable as they witnessed us pulling in with every safety bar in the wrong position. Needless to say, nobody else was allowed on the ride that day. I'm lucky to be alive and uninjured. Check your safety equipment, folks. When you wake up in the middle of a surgery. This has actually happened to me. I woke up in the middle of getting dental implants put in. But I was groggy and it was honestly still painless. Once it was over they said they tried to put me back under but I wouldn't go. I just kept my tongue out of the way and let them do their thing. Right after this is your captain speaking. Double quote. The amount of times I say whoops when I dial in the wrong altitude or type in the wrong waypoint is ridiculous. This is the entire reason we cross-check everything when it's particularly vital. There is a checklist and it gets triple checked when assembling IKEA furniture. Kind of happened in the dentist office. I was getting an implant, feeling quite uncomfortable as the dentist was twisting the base into place in my jaw, when suddenly the room went silent. The dentist pulled back then without a word, left the room. I could hear a muffled conversation between him and a colleague. When he came back in he said, "The implant has broken. We're looking around to see if we can find one the right size. In the meantime, we're going to have to remove what we've already installed. We'll do our best to make you comfortable. I don't have real good teeth. And I've been to the dentist hundreds of times in my life. But that day was the absolute worst. Not an implant, but I was having a root canal done and it was taking an extremely long time. Dentist says, 'Oh, I'll be back in a minute,' comes back with his older colleague who then proceeds to root around in my tooth. I'm not being told anything at this point. Procedure takes just over 2 hours. Should have been 45 minutes. He takes all the contraptions and shit out my mouth. I've got deep marks in my face from the equipment, and even with the anesthesia my jaw aches. He proceeds to send me for an x-ray, and only when I comes back clear does he explain that he snapped one of his tools in my tooth fairly early into the treatment and spent the best part of an hour trying to get the small piece of metal out. Then explains I need to make another appointment to come back for a crown. Yeah, that's not happening. Honest to God, the pain down the side of my face from having my jaw wedged open for 2 solid hours lasted for days. From the room you're in when you're supposed to be alone. Mission control shortly after takeoff. Worse. As with Challenger. They go silent. Skydiving. Oh. Instead of a parachute. Don ready pack my sack full of dildos. The delivery room in a hospital. How me and siblings was born. The eldest turned around, but first, when the water broke. The next one came out face first and I was kind of stuck somehow. While getting a vasectomy. Not quite that severe. But my vasectomy ended up taking about an hour instead of the typical 15-ish minutes. Because he just couldn't find the second vas deferens. Apparently the left one was really far over into the right side of the scrotum. So when he went in on the right side he snipped the left vas deferens instead of the right. When he went to the left side of the scrotum he couldn't find anything. Took him like 45 minutes of poking around in there to realize his mistake. My scrotum was f-king throbbing for days. Bathrooms. Operating tables. Sex. The power plant. Working in the laboratory with dangerous chemical substances. Shall I continue? So let me get your story straight. You were having sex on an operating table inside a bathroom of a power plant where they were working with dangerous chemicals in the lab room? And then you heard "oh" at the vet. You'll never hear "oh" at a vet clinic unless it's something like your dog peeing on the furniture. Anything else? You get a round trip. Comprehensive tour of parental procreating. Excrement. And at least 3 religions worth of bad language. We swear a lot over the littlest things. Bad coffee. Bad hair day. Good coffee. Funny joke. And yes. Of course. Any medical emergency will turn the room blue. But whenever a pet craps in the carrier or pees on the rug. Oh. Double quote. Source. I'm vet. Your criminal defense attorney's office. In court with your defense attorney. I've covered enough court cases to know that lawyers always try to act as though anything that happens is exactly what they expected would happen. But you can tell when they're really saying "oh. Fuckity fuck" underneath that emotionless facade. Home alone at 3 AM. Reading a gay fanfic on your phone when you hear "oh" next to you. But when you turn around you don't see anyone. Over the course of a few weeks you hear "oh." Also, when you have people over they also hear "oh." But no one knows. That would be the worst. This happened to me during a vasectomy. Local anesthetic. Shaved balls, etc. One side went fine. A bit of pressure and tugging. But bearable. The left one was going okay. Until I felt something slip and an "oh." Just after he cut my tube. The clamp holding the aforementioned tube slipped off. The clamp fell on the floor. The tube shot inside of me. Released of its tension. He looked up at me and said he was going to give me more anesthetic. He gave me the shot and waited a few minutes. He then got some long, thin forceps. Stuck them in the incision and went fishing. Holy hell. I have never felt such a sick to the bottom of your spine pain like it. My leg jerked in reflex and kicked the trolley with all the sanitized instruments on it all over the floor. He stopped and found a new sterile set. By this time the anesthetic was beginning to wear off and he couldn't give me any more. The next few minutes are burned into my soul like a branding iron on your foreskin. The pain was biblical. Took my breath away. It made me want to puke and run at the same time. Finally he found the end and pulled it back out. I felt like my insides were being unraveled like barbed wool. I felt every stitch after that. I still get flashbacks to that gut-wrenching pain. In 2016 I had an angiogram. That's where they shove a wire into your wrist, up your arm, then they navigate it to your heart. They then squirt some contrast dye and they gauge by how much they squirt into the corresponding rate coming out how clogged your artery is. Of course it definitely doesn't help when you hear "uh-oh" from the guy poking around inside your heart at that point. But yeah, that's about the worst time I needed to hear that. My right coronary artery was 99% blocked lol. Actually, not lol really, as I got lost on the system and it took almost a year to finally have my heart operation. Good old UK NHS. Pile of shit. When the surgeon says, the knee bone's connected to the something. The something's connected to the red thing. The red thing's connected to my wristwatch. Oh. When somebody turns on the TV to see who won the election. I work on the ambulance and the rule is you never say "oh." Instead it's "that's interesting." A stylist at a salon is doing a major color transformation on you. They come back after 30 minutes to check on your hair color. They open up the first foil. Oh. Several years ago I worked on a coastal barge for transporting sand, stone and aggregate up and down the coast. One of the managing directors decided it was time to take the helm of the ship after X amount of years of not doing it. The shift goes smoothly and we rotate crews over. I went to sleep as I'd unloading. So the first mate took over for the unloading in the morning, so I get my head down. My cabin is located under the wheelhouse bridge. I begin to drift off despite having daylight coming in through the porthole. The curtains we had were crap, and suddenly there's an alrighty crash and I'm thrown to the floor from the bed. I hear an "oh" from the bridge. Pick myself up from the floor. Getting dressed and go up to the bridge to see what all the commotion was all about. I see. On the quayside the managing director on the quayside speaking to the crane operator. I ask the skipper, more or less the captain of the vessel, what had happened. He looked at me shaking his head and sighed, pointing to the bow, the front of the ship, and explained that the director had gone and FK'd it when coming into port, his words exactly, and had explained that the first mate could have had his hand crushed in the incident as he was standing next to the point of impact. By the time I had worked my way up to the bow to ask my shipmate if he was alright and to survey the damage, the managing director had disappeared from sight. Can you blame him? Moral of the story? Don't let management touch anything. I have some old pictures somewhere. Did a bungee jump once. Went off to the platform to jump off. Got ready. Started jumping. At exactly that point where you can't stop the jump anymore. Yet haven't left the platform. The instructor yelled "oh. Wait." So there I was, falling off the cliff screaming and fearing for my life. Just to find out I got pranked. When the anesthesiologist is actively inserting a needle into my spine during active labor. This casual whoops was accompanied by a splatter of liquid all up my back. It's okay. The syringe just broke. He got a new one and everything was fine. But that fucker turned down the AC to Arctic levels during the 5 minutes he was in my room. Rude. I remember ages ago reading about some space disaster, I think, possibly Challenger in 1986, where there was a recording of someone saying "oh" from a black box right before an explosion happened. Nuclear power plant. First, they're trained not to be hyperbolic in general as they're capable of causing panics and their job security is directly hinged on their safety performance. Secondly, the list of things that can go wrong is quite large, however the result of most of them are not catastrophic. People who work at nuke plants recognize this and so don't say "oh" for everything that is going wrong. This culminates that when a nuclear physicist says "oh" and then starts running. It's probably too late. In a public bathroom. Or worse yet, someone using your bathroom. If I hear someone say "oh" whilst on the toilet, I can only assume they've either had a terrible accident or are about to experience some form of terrible gastric exorcism. Airport luggage check-in line. Either from you or the people you are traveling with. When you've just given birth and instead of the doctor saying it's a girl boy, they just go "oh."